Okay, so the political ground is definitely shifting right now. On one hand, you've got President Trump cozying up to a socialist mayor, and on the other, he's basically celebrating a key conservative ally heading for the exit. So, what is going on here? We're going to unpack all of it and dive into a brand new poll that shows exactly why the administration might be feeling these tremors.
So to really get what's happening, we got to start with this moment from last week that just had the whole political world buzzing. This quote from Fox and Friends, it really just captures how completely out of left field this all was.
And that meeting, it's really just one piece of this wild puzzle. The last few weeks have been full of these totally unexpected political moves. You've got new alliances forming, while the old ones are just breaking apart. Okay, first up, this meeting. It was surprisingly warm between the Republican president and New York's socialist mayor-elect, Zoran Mamdani. I mean, people were calling it a love fest, and they apparently found some common ground on big issues like housing and inflation. This is a political team-up that, let's be honest, absolutely nobody saw coming.
But, at the very same time, all this friendly outreach is happening. You've got this major news breaking from inside the president's own party, right on Capitol Hill, and it's a totally different story.
So think about this. While he's embracing a socialist mayor, the president reportedly celebrated the resignation of one of his biggest, most loyal allies, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. And that reaction, it's just poured gasoline on all the speculation about some really big shifts happening inside the GOP.
So what on earth is driving all this political volatility? Well, a new national poll from Fox News gives us some really crucial context. And the numbers, they're pretty revealing. They might actually explain these bizarre political moves we're seeing.
All right, let's get into the numbers. The top-line figure here is pretty stark. The president's job approval rating has sunk to 41%. That's a brand new low for his current term in office, and it's a really clear signal that a lot of people are unhappy. And, of course, on the flip side of that, you have a solid 58% of voters who now disapprove of the president's performance. That's a pretty significant majority saying, nope, not happy with the job you're doing.
Okay, so what's fueling all this? Well, it really seems to be economic anxiety. A massive 76% of voters, think about that, more than 3 out of every 4 people rate the national economy negatively. That is an overwhelming consensus. You just don't see numbers like that very often.
But here's where the story gets even more interesting, and maybe a little more complicated for the White House. The most alarming data for them isn't just coming from voters in general. It's coming from deep within their own base. Yeah, just look at these trend lines. They're pretty significant. Support has really softened among the very groups that powered his return to office. We're talking career-high disapproval among white voters and men. And for non-college grads, a whopping 70% feel negative about their own personal finances. And get this, even among Republicans, his approval has slipped 6 points just since March.
The poll also shows this really fascinating shift in who voters are blaming for the tough economy. The old arguments, they might not be landing like they used to.
And this right here is absolutely crucial. So while, a slim majority of Republicans still blame the previous administration, a stunning 42%, almost half, of the president's own party now holds him responsible for the economy. Wow. That's a huge crack in that partisan wall. And when you look at those critical independent voters, it's not even a contest. The blame falls squarely on President Trump by more than a 2-to-1 margin. 62% are pointing the finger right at the current administration. And look, this blame game isn't happening in a vacuum. It's tied directly to the real-world pain people are feeling in their wallets. You've got nearly 80% of low-income households feeling squeezed financially. And it's no wonder, right? When 85% of all voters say their grocery bills are up and 78% say the same thing about their utility bills, that's something people feel every single day.
Okay, so let's pull all this together. What's the big takeaway from all this data? What does it all mean for the political landscape, especially as we head into what looks like a pretty turbulent winter?
Well, for years now, we've all heard this term, the working class realignment. It's the whole theory that the Republican Party was building this new, super durable coalition of support. But what this poll strongly suggests is that this so-called realignment, well, it's proving to be a lot more fragile than anyone thought.
And what that does is it creates this incredibly difficult strategic problem for the White House. They're basically fighting a two-front war now. They've got to win back those crucial independent voters in the middle, but at the exact same time, they've got to figure out how to stop the bleeding of support from within their own base.
And that really leaves us with the central question, the one that's probably going to define this entire next chapter of the presidency.
With his core support starting to waver, and the blame for the economy shifting right back to him, the question isn't just about winning new voters anymore. It's about survival. Can the administration stop the bleeding in its own base before it's too late?